Welcome to the Boston Art Podcast,
Boston's premier art podcast,
where we talk art, culture, and philosophy.
My name is Theodora Earthworms.
And I am Brian Huntress.
Welcome to the show.
Hey guys, Brian here to provide some quick context for the upcoming episode. What you're about to listen to is the final segment in our 7-part interview series we've recorded this fall about an exhibition that is currently on view at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. The exhibition is titled Touching Roots, Black Ancestral Legacies in the Americas. It's on the 3rd floor of the Art of the Americas wing in the MFA. This exhibition is included with general admission, so there is no extra cost to see it, and we highly recommend that you check it out. This week's installment was with Jamaican-born Boston artist and professor Bryan Mcfarlane, who had work featured in the Touching Roots exhibition. Bryan is a very, very, very accomplished artist who is represented by the NAGA Gallery on Newbury Street in Boston. He has taught and lectured at colleges around the country. We were able to talk to 7 of the artists and curators involved in Touching Roots, and we have learned so much. We have had so much fun doing this. Thank you so much to everybody that has participated. Believe me, we are beyond grateful, and also we're releasing these interviews in chronological order, so you get to learn with us. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for tuning in. Enjoy the episode.
So I just want to say right off the bat, your studio is beautiful. I feel like every day in Boston and through this podcast and stuff, I learn about something completely brand new about the city. I had no idea this building was even here.
Oh, really? Yeah. It has been around for, maybe a good, I would say 10, 15 years in terms of the artist occupants.
Yeah.
Being occupant of this space. Before that, we were housed on the main campus on Leon Street, right near the museum. Mm-hmm. But of course, artists are never seen as fundraisers, necessarily as a strong commercial component of the university, or in achieving grants like the science department as such.
Yeah.
Big science
so they
city.
moved us to the old building, the ghetto area, which is okay. I mean, artists know how to use resource and in a positive way.
Yeah.
And when I use the word ghetto, I just mean in the sense that the building is in disrepair. They never repair it. It's artists who occupy, so they never see it as biology or law faculty or whatever. They see it more as just art.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
So I noticed right off the bat, one thing that's really cool about it is there's a really big diversity in your subject matter in terms of these large and beautiful abstracts and a lot of figurative work up here too.
Yeah.
Is the figurative work stuff you're currently doing, or are you doing a lot of abstract work right now?
The figurative work, like that, for example, piece down there, I did about 1982, 83. That's about almost 30 odd years ago. These figures up here I did in about 1987, 88. I was a kid. I was young at the time. I did a lot of these pieces that were about artists in their studios and what they do.
Oh, and this guy up here, stretching a canvas?
Yeah, whatever, yeah. Artists eat and paint, artists sleep in, artists whatever. I got one of Ford Foundation Fellowship. Massachusetts Council Foundation grant, I remember, for that series. So this is a tiny part. So I just collect my own work so that I don't get rid of everything over time. I try to keep a sort of history of my own development. Yeah. And so these are very old. They're very old. I was in my probably early 20s, maybe 20 when I did. So I worked in the figure when I would say between 16 and 22 a lot. The human figure was a narrative to say something about our humanity, social, psychological, biological, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So
And you've moved more towards abstraction now. Like these are pieces in progress over here.
I'm still I'm still a figure painter. I
Yeah.
just, you know, I've gone through different stages in life, and I'm more you know, examining or exploring different subject matter that relates to how we exist,
Yeah.
and the mind, the spirit. I travel a lot. I've lived in many different countries, so that helps to kind of inform the subject matter, what I paint. You know, I have a studio in Beijing, China. I haven't been there for 2 years because of the geopolitics,
Yeah.
but I've had that studio for 14 years. You know, I was in Brazil. I lived there. I painted. I went to Africa 3 different times, where I spent my sabbatical as a professor, painting in Africa, West Africa. So basically, and what each country you live, you will either there'll be something iconic in terms of the environment or the people, and usually I try to zero into that iconography and make it into my own story
Yeah.
in some direct way. So, hence, I was in Turkey for several, you know, years ago, and I did a play. I went to Istanbul, down to Cappadocia, near Babylus or Babylon, or near Turkey, and near Iran, Iraq. I did a whole series of painting on Cappadocia, or Cappadocia, it's pronounced biblically.
Oh, is this is this a cityscape?
There are mountains. There's a picture there on the wall. A literal picture. It's virtual. You can walk over and look.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
okay,
I'd love
it's not
to.
a problem.
Yeah.
But that's how. But people used to live in those places, and now they're living in them again, because time has passed,
Yeah.
and
Right.
people need real estate, so they're going back into the caves.
Oh wow.
I stayed in one of those caves for a week. So it's
Seriously?
but they're quite interesting. They're beautiful. A lot of kind of fresco type images done by during the time of the Ottoman Empire. So it's very. But you see, a lot of people, other than the historian, archaeologists, anthropologists, and a few tourists. There weren't a lot of American tourists going that direction. I remember when I was there. There were more European, like Germans and Dutch, and so on. So on this side of the world, those places are kind of very distant. But for Europe, those places are closer, and they've had a lot more historical relationship. Whereas in the United States, if a student doesn't really know about that, it's not because just the geographic distance, maybe, I guess.
Yeah.
So we'd love to take it even further back too, about kind of your biography and like how you came to be doing this. Like, I guess how did it start? Were you an artist? As a kid growing up, or where did you grow up? Also in Boston?
I grew
or?
up in Jamaica.
In Jamaica.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm a Jamaican. Yeah, I grew up in Jamaica. And I came here for graduate school because I was probably about 21.
Right.
And from there, I kind of evolved into, you know, an element of an American, and as well as keeping my Jamaican roots.
Yeah.
You know, I still go to Jamaica. I still have a studio in Jamaica. I've never let go of it. So I'm Jamaican living in America. So.
Yeah.
Hell yeah! And like, and where did you go to school when you came here?
Massachusetts College of Art.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mass Art, as well as course at the Museum of Fine Arts School. Prior to that, I went to the School of Art in Jamaica. So,
Was that your? So you did like you got like a bachelor's or something in?
I got a bachelor's in Jamaica, but when
Cool.
I came here, I probably was one of the couple black students that were here who came from that side of the world, so they didn't necessarily know. I remember in those days, if I should put it in this term, they didn't know very much about students coming from the Caribbean. We were more a British, kind of from the British system of education. So I was even a lot more qualified than even, what they thought.
Yeah.
But they said I should spend a year doing enrichment and then to give me a bachelor's degree again.
Oh.
So I did that, and it was okay because I learned a lot of new things more. But they kind of held me back for 1 year from graduate work, which is what I came and they accepted me for, which is kind of weird.
After your acceptance, they did that.
After my acceptance,
Wow.
they still think I should. But I think institutions then like that were very just very underdeveloped in terms of having interaction international with students from abroad.
Yeah.
I know students who come from Europe, maybe a few students, but at that time, Mass Art was really in the backwoods in terms of that kind of relationship. But it was a good school still. It was the cheapest school I could attend around the world. It's a government institution, right? I had gotten a scholarship to study at the Royal College in my master's.
Oh,
but
really?
I didn't have the money, so I came here.
Yeah.
So, and then that's how they treated me. But they didn't understand. I mean, I was a kid. I was a little kid, I mean, they couldn't understand that people actually leave high school at the age of 14 or have their diploma. In America, 20, 19,
Yeah.
you get your diploma, sometimes 17, 18.
Right.
Oh, that's it. So,
Well, so what
it
did...
was just a question of being informed.
Yeah.
Institutions have evolved a lot. Even the Ivy League schools, to a large extent, in learning about the rest of the world
Yeah.
over time. So, a lot of nonsense used to take place in these established institutions. But just like anybody else, we all learn. They have to learn too. They learn. So none of those things I don't think really happen again. So,
How old were you when you came here then for Mass Art?
I was about 20 going to 22.
Oh, okay, cool.
22. Yeah. So I had taught before, after getting my bachelor's, I taught for 2 years before I came here. So that was it. Yeah. So,
That's really cool to get to start on that so early. So I feel like it's a couple years ahead of where, as you said, usually people do it in Boston.
Yeah, well, it was kind of, you grew up in a reality where you thought it was normal to go to art school at the age of 15 and receive your bachelor's degree by the age of 19.
Yeah.
I thought it was normal, but then when you go into a different educational social system, it doesn't operate that way. So you just have to, adjust.
That's exciting to me to hear because I grew up in Boston or around Boston, but I was homeschooled, so I actually started college when I was 16.
Oh,
so
great.
I didn't finish it. But
I
that's
didn't get any
interesting
kind
to
of
me to hear.
diploma either.
Yeah.
Well,
So
what's always important is what you do with your life, and not so much, necessarily identifying with a piece of paper in front of you. It's not the bachelor's that's going to make you a valuable person. Actually, it's you, the person, personhood. So.
Yeah.
what do you think made you want to become an artist in the first place?
Well, my father actually was very artistic. He wanted to go to art school. He wanted to paint, and he just, but he started having children and just couldn't afford the idea of being an artist in a so-called third world country then. Where there's a lot of struggle with his family and whatever.
Yeah.
What was his job instead?
He basically was an extremely artistic person and would do labor, just general labor and survive.
Blue collar stuff.
As a young kid.
Yeah.
Remember, people used to get married at 19 and those kind of age in those times. The wife is 17 or 18, and then the guy is 21 or maybe 22. And they were very young. They didn't have a formation of a real life yet, but then went and did, he was extremely good as an artist. But then he went and did tailoring. He became a designer,
Oh, wow.
designed clothing and did wonderful, suits, and taught many people as well. Expanded, opened a big establishment, having 20 tailors working under him.
Wow.
But he was known a lot as a tailor designer or whatever.
Yeah.
I did a painting of him when he got married in a suit, because he got married later, but he had children long before he got married. So so it was interesting. I mean, he was very into kind of poetry, writing,
Yeah.
painting, and even jumped a ship with his friend prior to meeting my mother, trying to get away to London.
Oh, wow.
But then jumped back into the ocean and swim back to shore because he felt a bit, intimidated by, just the idea of being away from his family and so on. So
Yeah.
other friends of mine, it sounds like a myth, but his other friends, one of them even made it. His name is Van Peterson rather, who I think is an artist who died in New York. He was a great artist.
Wow.
He was with my father when they were trying to get away to England. He went in the ship. They stowed away.
Wow.
And it's funny. I'm telling you this story. I've not told a lot of people. So it's
We
personal
appreciate it.
stories.
Okay.
So be careful what you do with the information. All
Sure.
right? So but my family, where my father's concerned. What was the other question? I mean, what? Was
I guess just talking about like how you came to be interested in the arts, or
Okay.
why you wanted to. It is a really interesting story though to know. Like, it makes sense. A lot of people we talk to, got their artistic spirit or interest from their families, almost all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a maroon set of people. They're called maroon in Jamaica, and they're very artistic people. There's an artist by the name of Moody in England, a sculptor, who's well known in the modernist movement, and he was a maroon. He was from our family. The Maroons were particularly a set of people from Ghana, West Africa, who were forced to go to Jamaica as slaves, but then they destroyed the ship and went to the mountains and lived. That's what I'm kind of painting about right now. There's a lot of story behind my family, particularly my family, directly related. And I'm not trying to make my family a novel, it's a fact.
Yeah.
My grand uncle, who was Maroon leader for many years, for at least 60 years, he died at 100.
Whoa.
And his sister died at 107.
Wow.
So things like that. I mean, they were community leaders in Jamaica, in the mountains, the Blue Mountains, and they led and kept the people like senators, kept them together so that they could survive. So, during the time when the Queen actually didn't give certain types of permission to colonial, but they had their own land because it was a treaty between the Queen of England and literally my ancestors. And to have that area of land, it's called the Cockpit Country on Accompong, which is a town called Maroon Town in Jamaica. So like certain American Indians, you had your own plot of land.
Yeah.
You signed a treaty, the Jamaicans won the war. Not just Jamaicans, but a woman. She's at the Museum of Fine Arts. I painted her.
Oh.
Her name is Nana, which means nurturer. In this country, they say nanny. Nanny, which means a nurturer of a child.
Oh,
a black woman with white children, kids.
Right.
Nannies. That's what people know it as. But the word is a word from Ghana, come from the language, the Twi language, and the T-W-E, and Nana means nurturer. That's original.
Yeah.
But in English they call it nanny. So
wow.
okay, so
I never knew about that.
but a Nana is a very important person, is a leader, a person who knows a lot about herbs and medicine, extremely knowledgeable in terms of history and oral history, etc. That's a Nana. The version that they have in the United States is just a degraded one. So it has nothing to do with Africa or Africans have lived, or women and how they nurture children. It was just twisted and subverted here. So because of slavery in America, it's the same old story.
Yeah. Wow. And you said that's a piece. You said you painted a piece that's in the MFA that is about that.
Yeah, I have a piece at the MFA. I don't know if you saw it. It's the largest painting in the Black Ancestral Legacy show. It's a very big piece. It's called Ritual Dance.
Yeah.
I did that piece, and it's I did it in 1988. So
okay.
It's the one on the farthest back wall.
Yeah, it's the farthest,
yeah, we did see that. We were able to meet with Martina, and she told us a lot about it. About how there were themes of dancing. Yeah. And involved in like the kind of. Could you talk about maybe the theme of dancing in your work and in that painting?
Just a little. I mean, I just usually, if I talk about my work, for example, this is oral or verbal, and it's kind of informal, not too formal. But I always like to present a very formal thing regarding if I'm going to talk about the full aspect of a story that's really important. I don't think it should be casually talked about.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think the reason why I give you more and more information as I talk to you is because I don't want to just make a sentence and make it seem like it's just some mythology and then move on. I want to make sure that's why
that it's
if
serious.
I seem like I go into detail, it's, I want to make sure you have a rounded enough story.
Yeah, and
that's good. We love that.
Yeah, and we really want to depict, your work and your words as you want them depicted. You know what I mean? I feel like, I don't know, because the thing is, where we're coming from with the story a lot of the time too is that we really we are 100% not experts. We're just doing this just for the love of the game. We just love art so much, and we love we got to see the Touching Roots show just one time.
The what?
Touching Roots, the show, the MFA exhibition, and we were blown away by the story of the show and all the work in it, and to be invited and to talk with some of the people involved, like yourself, is honestly a huge honor and a privilege for us to be in your studio. I mean, this is a really, really intimate and personal space.
It's my pleasure. I mean, it's we should we're all in the same geographic location and space community, and I think it's whatever we talk about, the more we know each other. Yeah. Fundamentally, we know ourselves as basic human beings, but we do have peculiar stories, and when we know each other more, I think we become less intimidated, there'll be less hate, there'll be less kind of, schizophrenia, there'll be less of all these kind of illness. So I take you guys seriously. I mean, if you're going to do something like this, it has to be done properly.
I agree.
Or it has to be more or less articulated, with a certain amount of weight. So. And
if you want, to talk about, what we plan to do with the show as well, or with the recordings, is that we actually we don't change them, or we don't edit any of the recordings. We like to just record. We just like to record the conversations just as they happen, as they are, and just put them out just like that. We don't. I don't know. We try not to. I know. I can really appreciate that you present your artworks and your thesis behind them as formal and exact as you want them to be seen. And we actually kind of like to do the show in a way that. What am I trying to say?
I know usually when
Oh
we
yeah,
don't
try
have
to save me.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the reason that we don't edit for the most part is because we don't want to put our own spin on someone else's story. So we try to kind of keep it as long format as we can so that your voice comes through. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's important, and to have spaces like that. You know, a lot that respects a story and not, as I say, put a spin.
Yeah.
Any kind of idiosyncratic spin on it. You know, that's really important. I mean, largely prior to this kind of technology, you know, Africa, parts of Asia, and many cultures, you know, did relate with this authenticity of just telling stories. People told stories orally, and orality has its place, and now we have the technology that can freeze it and keep it alive, and that's great. You know, but orality has always been, even in Platonian philosophy, Plato himself was an orator. He was more someone who, you know, orality was it wasn't what he wrote.
Yeah.
Lots of what we know about the literature of the Greek society is minimal, because oral culture was essentially part of Greek culture. A lot of people don't really realize that. So now so we see some of the literature and we, wow, look at these wonderful things, you know. But a lot of the stuff, the half has never been told. You know, it has never been written down. A lot of stuff is not, and so is African culture too, or the American Indians who are here, you know, etc. It's the same thing. Now we have this technology. Hopefully, when we record stuff, they can remain. And I think NPR is one of the standard that kind of keep a certain, you know, a certain kind of, I would say, openness about the possibility of a story being told just as it is, without any kind of, you know, I think they have techniques, a lot of techniques that tend to attempt to do that.
Yeah, they're definitely big inspirations for us in terms of, because we're not a part of any kind of network, we're just doing this on our own. But in terms of oral tradition and the ability to record it and stuff, like, that's huge for us, because one thing, like, you know, one thing that, you know, we've seen a lot.
Do you want to sit down?
Oh, sure, yeah, we'd love to sit.
I mean,
Yeah, no, it's okay, yeah.
You want to sit high if you're
Sure,
low or what?
I'll just hang here, it's all good.
Thank you.
But, you know, I guess as I was saying, like, one thing that we see a lot is that, or that we feel like may be true, is that the story of Boston isn't really, like, or the story of, I don't know, like, something that really excites and inspires me and excites both of us to do this project is that we feel like there's just so much stories that are not documented, are not recorded, are not being told, and we are in a, you know, I sometimes feel like we're not even adding anything to this. We just, like, get people to talk to us. They tell us absolutely amazing, insightful, and beautiful stories every single time. You know, and you've even done that so far. Like, just the insight just the conversation so far is already so interesting. And it's like, if we can give that even to a small group of people, it's like, you know, I don't know, because, like,
documentation is important.
Right, yeah, and just allowing these conversations and these recordings to exist, you know, beyond, because we've, you know, I mean, I'm sure that you can relate to this too. I mean, some of the most transformative moments in my life have just been like a conversation with a person that I cared about that I didn't even expect to have. And it was like, my mind was blown or something.
Yeah, it's, you know, once, I think, once there are certain kinds of entrance that opens up, you know, under these kind of predictable circumstances. And, you know, usually from other than, I think, people opening up when they're lovers or they feel somehow some sort of spiritual connection to someone.
Yeah.
there are other aspects of ourselves that will open up if we sense honesty and no intimidation at all, so, or no form of and so, yeah, there's always a lot of story in our lives to be told, and we just need to be in a situation where there's honesty.
And something that I think is important to point out too is that people, maybe even in our role, like in recording conversations or doing something journalistic, have not always honored stories.
I know.
Or have done people completely wrong.
I know.
And misrepresented shit,
Yeah, well, it's that's unfortunate, and we know there are news media or news outlets in this country that constantly just spew forth just garbage,
hatred,
constantly, hatred, and it's unfortunate. Leaders who are doing that, but then, down to earth, this is possible. It's possible just to have a regular conversation, ask question and answer, without all the artificial bullshit. So
bullshit's a good word.
We try.
Excuse my
No, it's totally okay.
language.
So in terms of like the show with the museum and having like the biggest painting in the show, especially has that been a new experience for you, or have you worked with museums in the past?
Yeah, I have done a number of museum shows throughout my career.
That's awesome.
Starting with Jamaica museum there, and I've shown at several museums in Beijing, Shanghai, museums throughout the United States. The Museum of Fine Arts, it wasn't my first time showing there.
Wow.
The ICA, I've shown in the Boston Now series that I showed there twice. The Museum of Fine Arts, the first time I remember showing there was probably about 1987, 88. And I'd come out of school and a few years outside, and there's a show called the Massachusetts Masters, African American. So what is interesting is the title of the show, because I began to feel as if I was a master, which is kind of ridiculous. But then you were very young at that time, and you realize anyway that was just one aspect of your career. And so museum show, yes, I've been lucky enough, and to have.
That's a huge accomplishment. That's so cool.
Shows, at museums.
I'm curious
in Florida
too.
as well.
Oh wow. I'm curious if you. I don't want to make you go into anything personal, so definitely don't feel obligated to say anything. But I'm curious too, what your attitude was like, or your personality was like coming out of college. You're graduating from mass art with this degree, and you're in this new city, and getting put into museums and stuff. What were you working in a studio? Did you have tons of friends, or were you hanging in galleries or something, or what did it look like?
What kind of grounded me was to have a studio, and initially I remember the African American master artist in residency invited me to have a studio. It was like a little section of there. It wasn't really one of the full-fledged studio anyway. It was a little half room, and they just gave, say.
What was their name?
A studio. It's the same AMARP here.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood. Okay.
AMARP, the African American Master Artist.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's an organization founded by Dana Chandler, who was a Boston artist. Northeastern gave him a huge space, and he felt he needed to share with other African American artists.
Yeah.
Because, and that was the late 70s, in 1978 maybe. And he felt he needed to share that he knew many other artists who didn't have a space to work, and he thought he had too much space. So he asked Northeastern to expand the concept, and Northeastern did. And so I became a kind of beneficiary. Like, when I met Dana said, okay, there's a little section of the room you could, So that helped to ground me, the idea of having a studio, because I wasn't ready to go home right away.
Yeah.
Yet I wasn't. I just graduated. I wanted to somehow explore. Maybe even I was broke. I wanted to, make some money possibly, or sell some of the work I had. However naive I was at the time. So that helped me to produce some work. Having a space is a good basis. And I also felt a little like that painting. It's called I'm Running Over the City. And it's called Paranoia. Not that I would like to then be defined by that painting, but then I did that painting at that time, around that time, because it kind of, also the racism in the city was sometimes very poignant. I mean, it was present, it was there. And at the same time, I was coming from a country where I was, a majority black population, so I'm not easily intimidated by the idea of being called a minority. I never thought of myself as a minority, even those times, because I was coming out of a situation where you have a majority, and my mindset wasn't set in any way. So irrespective of how often I would hear the word, I just, I externalized it. I wouldn't necessarily keep it. But of course, it was part of the political and social reality. And so to that extent, I accepted it. And the fact is that when Patricia Hill, I remember, a great historian who has written a lot about Alice Neil's work. If you know Alice Neil is a great woman, a white woman from New York City, who have done enormous. And I think they had a retrospective of her work at MoMA up to several months ago.
Oh, wow.
But Alice Neil was one of the greatest figure painter during the time when abstract expressionism, Jackson Pollock and all those artists were doing a lot of work and being praised. She was doing great work, but not everybody ignored her because it was a figure, and everybody was looking at abstraction, or the museums were looking at Picasso and more abstract and men, as it were.
Yeah.
But then, they discovered Alice Neil. They say, whoa, and even now. So the woman who actually invited me to show, she at Boston University was this historian, and she had written about Alice Neil, and she was trying to create some sort of sociological art treatise on artists around Boston and their experience. So that helped grounded me too, because then I felt as if recognition was coming not only from, say, the African American community. It was not just merely about a color thing, but there were also, historians, critics, artists from other race, from the white race, who were looking at my work and taking me seriously. That's very important. And so how I felt as you asked the question, I felt that kind of back and forth tension, but at the same time I felt very strong. I felt very, now that I had a terminal degree in fine arts, and I felt as if I could start doing some of the things I always wanted to do, like travel and so on. So, and that began to happen, because every time I sell a painting, I would go to France or go to, England, or see my sister who lived in England, or go to wherever I wanted to go. I traveled, and each time I traveled, I would spend time, a long time, and I would also go after fellowships, and when I got fellowships, that would help me to kind of stay wherever. I taught at the College of the Holy Cross. That's where I got my...
Holy Cross?
Yeah, in Worcester. So I remember when I went there, I became a little more academic in a lot of my ideas, and because they had an institution that would help support somewhat your ideas, even though it did it carefully. But and that was Holy Cross was a good college in a lot of ways. I didn't get tenure there, I went on to another school and got tenure at UMass. So I taught at the museum school before I went there. The School of Museum was a fabulous experience. I really liked the School of Museum because I taught there for 4 years. And I remember Dean MacDonald, he saw my work at ICA and he said, "Oh, I would like you to teach at the museum." And that's how I got that job. I didn't have to go through a lot of interview necessarily. He just saw the work and said he would like. And so good things happened, after I graduated, the earliest period of the master's degree. And, a lot of positives, and I thought I would stay around longer, applying for jobs or whatever. I think I was one of the more luckier artists, luckier than many of my white counterparts and so on. I don't think I wouldn't just put my luck against black artists. I think all the artists, I was very lucky.
Lucky in general across the board.
Yeah,
I understand.
There are moments of luck in life that doesn't matter what color you are or whosoever you are. And it's important to understand that and to take that as a positive element and move forward and not for me, my philosophy is not based primarily on race. It's based on something more transcendental and existential that can move you forth and let you do anything you want to do. And it's important for all artists. It doesn't matter who you are to have that kind of sense. Not to have so much ego where you never can listen or hear what someone else has to say, but to just to have a degree of humility if that's possible.
Yeah.
Because artists are very in themselves, when they're ready. So,
And that sense of like confidence and surety in who you were, like, how do you, like, I feel like that's something definitely that a lot of young people struggle to find in themselves, and a lot of people maybe get really bogged down by people, saying negative shit or putting them down, and I guess I'm curious, like, do you feel like maybe it was your accomplishment in art already and the fact that you completed your education and, like, because I say that as someone, I failed out, I didn't graduate, so, like, and I remember that kind of messed
David
my
Hockney
head
is
a
a
little
great
bit.
artist and he never graduated.
Oh, yeah?
If you know David Hockney, a British artist, he's really important, like the top.
Yeah.
He's probably one among the 5 most important artists in Britain. David Hockney is one.
Yeah, I've heard his name.
He never graduated. And there are other artists.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. I don't think there's a magic to graduation.
Right.
I think it's the person who you are and continue to be after you graduate. My sister was the best artist in our family. The one I visited in London.
Yeah.
She was the best. She taught me probably most of what I knew during my younger age, even more than my undergraduate. I mean, she knew so much. She was basically the second eldest person in our family. And so I used to hang out with her and we did a lot and so on. So, and yet she didn't become an artist. She didn't stay in the art world, so to speak, and become an artist. Because her personality and her sociological and cultural and upbringing basically were pressing her to become a mother or to become to think of other kinds of things that's being important. So it's not so much that even the talent and you have or the graduation, whether or not you graduate. It's a question of somehow the forces in society and directly also related to family, how they guide you and how they push you and how they accept you even when you do not necessarily hold up to societal norms, the standards that sometimes are artificially shoved down your throat. You can be successful in many other ways other than by graduating from something. Graduation is important because initiation is important.
Interesting.
The idea of initiation and ritual is very, very important. The dance ritual, the piece I did there at the museum, that's the title of it.
Right.
It's a form of initiation and a ritual that this woman is going through. And it's important that we as human beings, irrespective of our race, our class, or whatever, we all go through certain rituals, depending where we are in society, and that ritual will have a profound kind of effect on our minds and will determine what we become later on in life. And a certificate from a university is just one of them. It's just one. As long as no college student should be taught that it is only when you have a degree that you're going to be successful. That's bullshit. That's nonsense. I mean, the fact is that idea is pushed a lot by parents because we understand how the place of many times universities and colleges within certain type of communities. The person who can read and write and the learned person in that regard are usually considered the successful or elitist or the person above other people. And that's why in oral cultures they're usually looked down upon as if they don't have a story as profound as the ones who write the story, who learn to read and write. There's that kind of prejudice in the idea of what is formal education. And because there's all these prejudice, but it's all tied to ritual. Some people go through a certain ritual and they think they're higher than other people, and then another set go through a certain ritual and look with disdain on those who look down on them. And there's that kind of rift that goes on in society that is largely psychological and learned. And when children or college kids learn from early, the basis from the freshman year, like what college is about, and they're given a fairly balanced philosophy, then they won't, if they don't finish school, they won't come out thinking that they failed, because that doesn't mean that they failed. It's just one stage of their lives, and that's it, period. I mean, I know some of the most brilliant people. My granduncle, who spoke 12 languages, who was a Maroon leader in Jamaica, and whose parents were from Ghana. I mean, he didn't have a UWI bachelor's degree, University of West Indies bachelor's degree, or master's or PhD, but many people all over the world sought him and gave him degrees, and he was invited and given honorary degrees.
Wow.
I mean, and he didn't do a bachelor's degree. I mean, and yet he knew languages, he knew rituals, he kept a lot of the oral culture from Africa, his parents, because his sister died at 107 years old. I mean, things like that. I mean, what is really a degree anyway? I mean, it's really important for certain type of tight-ass society that feel that only degree will function, but common sense and other kinds of degrees are important. It's not just the degree on the paper or the one which or the ritual of doing different courses and finally graduating.
It's only one metric of knowledge.
Right.
That makes sense.
See, it doesn't. I mean, so it actually, we're living in a time where a lot of young people are questioning that idea too, the relevance of degrees and universities in their lives, and the fact is that they have a right to be questioning it, because many times they're not advised well by the professor or the parents, either at times, and they're given these extreme views, of what success is. So, and that's okay. I mean, society will be what it is,
It's a hard thing too, because I feel like a lot of parents do that because they want their kids to do well and succeed, and it's what they heard when they were growing up.
Of course, it's a tradition.
So,
it's just carry on the tradition. That's it. But real thoughtful, agonizing kind of analysis of these kind of life, whatever things, these kind of things. When people really think through these things very seriously, they'll realize that there are a lot of other answers to the question of success, and it's a very hard thing, when a society sets a certain direction and it doesn't Like, to me, some of the greatest courses I was able to teach were the one where I just took students to China, or I took them to France, or I took them, and that was it. You cannot teach that in a classroom or a book or academic. You can't do that. I used to teach in France every summer. I had students from Yale University, the Museum School from RISD, and so on. And we would go to France. We would be there for 6 weeks, and 40 of them. And we would be around Paris, and this was through the Pontevin School of Contemporary Art, organized by Brown University and RISD. And we would have all these Ivy League students, all of them just want A, and they don't want to go home unless they get an A, and I'm not going to give an A if you don't deserve it, So the fact is that that's the kind of pressure parents put on students, and even when they do very, very well. So they won't be able to sometimes judge the work that is better work, and that which deserves A and that which don't deserve A, because they're so blind to the idea that they have to get an A. So they're not looking at the quality of work they're doing. They're thinking about other issues, and it affects the quality of expression and how they produce a work, and it also affects their confidence in terms of whether or not they feel they can exist in the world and just feel solid and move through, because of all these other artificial principles imposed on them. So the greatest, what you're doing, the greatest thing is the experience. John Dewey, 19th century philosopher, American philosopher, educator, he talks about art as experience. That when experience become art, or just like you're doing your podcast is your experience, and you don't come to it with any bias. It's possible to exist in a space and learn a lot of stuff, as you have been saying. You have been learning a lot from other people by just simply doing something you love. You love art, you love art, so you just do, and that's it. You're not interested in bias. You're not interested in taking away anything from a person, it means that it's going to become a very rewarding kind of experience, and that's it. I think I'm talking too much here.
No, that's the best way it can go. Is it's you talking more than us. It will come out better that way.
I'm interested too. This might be a little bit of a personal question, but I wonder, what are some experiences that you've had maybe that would be akin to that, like the idea of graduating, like something that you've learned from through life experience that informed your art?
Say that again. Sorry. I'll rephrase your question. Sorry.
That's okay. Maybe a little more succinctly, something that you've experienced when you were saying that to graduate or to finish school is only one kind of ritual or initiation that would push you forward in life. Is there something else that you've experienced that is unrelated to just academia that has pushed you forward as an artist that you can think of?
Yeah, I've been in rituals, and I've observed rituals in Brazil that were related to people of Africa, Nigeria and parts of northeast Ghana, Kumasi, and those things and images I had heard my granduncle talk about, but never saw any photograph or anything of, because those things are never photographed. And then and these are things I knew since the age of like 8, 9, 10, and then they start coming back after observing certain rituals, and you see the stuff and you say, wait a second, that's this thing. It's like, I know it already. My grandfather had told me, a granduncle, about it. So that's a kind of translation of experience that has nothing to do with textbook and written communication, written knowledge. A lot of stuff in life is experienced and echoed later on or become reality through just being in geographic spaces and places that are different from the one that you have been. And I don't know if I'm translating clearly to you what I'm trying to say, But a lot of some of the most profound learning situation comes not necessarily connected to what I saw at school academically, the artistry course I took, but it was totally outside of just being a student in academia. It was just being with family or just or a friend or with a priestess or with my great-grandfather, the Maroon leader or so. And then you're in another space and then you just saw it manifested in front of you. So, you know, there's that kind of translation that you see translated what your parents or your grandparents had told you about in front of you in a location that is 15,000 miles away from where you were born.
Yeah.
And somehow you feel the connection and you feel as if it's your home. And yet, I mean, you're not home, but you're home. And so there are those kind of experiences are very special, a special way of learning and a way of understanding when you even approach a painting. When you approach a painting, you always have to think about the realism, reality, you know, the real image, the person, the figure, the tree, the water, the sunset, or whatever. But then that's the real thing. But then you have to also think about the translation, the type that has, you cannot in any way, it's not photography necessarily you're going to be using.
Yeah.
You're basically trying to find a form to embody some sort of archetypal image, to embody what you saw there, all the detail of the sun, the people, the person. You want to find a shape that will embody all of that without having to express every detail of everything you saw outside. You know, so you're simply taking, you know, you're simply taking something and translating it using maybe a few objects, something that you experienced that was extremely complex visually, but you're taking it and putting it into simple embodiments.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you know, I guess your boyfriend give you chocolate for Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
You know, and then you taste somehow the taste of the chocolate embodies what he was probably trying to express to you.
Oh wow.
Yeah, you experience it, but then you can't even verbalize because it's a sensual experience. It's something that has nothing to do with a lot of words. It's just come back in another translation what he's trying to say. But then you have to eat the chocolate to, you know. I mean, it might sound a bit trivial, you know, what I'm using.
No, it's very
like
cool.
But you know, I mean, I have to kind of, you know, maybe use a simple, you know, idea, because very young people nowadays, I don't know, to communicate, you have to definitely be able to take. You know, you have to. You can't just simply have your own head stuck up your own ass. Excuse my expression, but you've got to kind of. You have to find if you know what I mean, the stuff that they experience, existential, where they are, romance, hate, love, passion, the kind of stuff, not getting something that you always want, all this shit, all this kind, you know, there are all these kind of, you know, and I don't know, to draw an illusion and talk about something nowadays, I mean, I can't, if I use some of my paintings, nobody would understand what I'm talking about unless they've been to some certain places I've been to geographically. You know, it just doesn't seem, or they have had some sort of dream that I've had similar. Or so, because making art is trying to use ordinary material to make something that is highly transcendental. You know, and you're using ordinary material to do it. You know? Van Gogh, everybody loved him. He was able to do it with paint. because somehow they just somehow translated into this paint the way you use it. Somehow everybody just like look at it and they get it right away what you experience.
Yeah.
And it's just paint, it's stuff, it's matter. As a physicist would say, it's just stuff.
Yeah.
You know, that he daubed on. So yet spirit came out of it. You know. So.
Yeah, there's one Van Gogh in particular in the museum that when I look at it, like makes my brain feel fuzzy looking at it. You know, it's just the texture and the way he used the paint.
Yeah.
And I love getting that from like the art that I love the most is art that I just look at it and I don't even know what I'm feeling. But I just feel some like something weird washes over me and I'm just like
possesses you.
Yeah.
You comes over and there's a spirit. Africans always believe that a wood of a tree, I mean, and the Indians of the American Indian, is alive, that it has spirit. And if you can use a piece of material so that something comes out of it and embrace the person who's viewing it or touching it, then it means that somehow you were able to successfully use that material, that medium, and it can be this too, to profoundly affect a life.
Maybe.
And that is not always easy to explain how it's done, or it's just something like you're doing. You just do out of love or out of passion, and just do it. It will do the stuff it's supposed to do over time.
Yeah, it's like amazing to think about art and media in general as this idea of like, you know, human souls reaching to other human souls and connecting with other people. Like with the art as a conduit. Do you feel like the artist is the conduit, or is it the creation, or both?
Yeah, I think the artist is a conduit in a sense, and I feel we don't understand a lot about nature, but nature has its own life as well. Like we just don't understand how it can exist the way it exists, and yet doesn't respond to us the way we respond to it. You know, it's just, I think it's just the life's question, constant question. This whole idea of man and woman and nature. And we always feel as if we are the one who's responding. And the fact is that it is also responding to us. But to prove that is, you know, many times we have to look at Buddhist philosophy and history, or we can look at Christian ideas, or we can, you know, look at certain religions and how they manifest, or metaphysics, and then we begin to kind of get a slight understanding. But otherwise, it's very hard to kind of, you know, understand who's a conduit here. But I think that's something one has to just know. I don't think you can go and read to find out. I think it's a kind of revelation. I think people, like I know things respond to me that are doesn't necessarily have flesh and blood, you know. So, but we think about life and relative to our science, what we understand in terms of our brain, flesh and blood, and all these organs that, you know, and then we say that is the ultimate and that is what responds to thing. But the thing that is in front of us responds to us too, and we have to stay in front of it long enough to understand that. You know, so there's no time for that in the way we live nowadays. We're very busy, so we never have a chance to kind of stay in front of the tree and worship it enough until it responds to us. You know, we see that it can actually respond the same way we have been responding to stuff all our lives. Anyway. Yeah, I think I'm getting too kind of metaphysical and abstract.
No, I love this route, honestly.
All right, so it's okay.
I was going to say, I know you said earlier that having a studio, like coming out of college, really grounded you. And I feel like I relate to that too. Like when I have a designated space to go for making work, it's a lot easier to focus on it. And I wonder maybe if the function of a museum or a gallery kind of serves a similar purpose for someone to observe work that already is made. You go there with the intention of spending time with that piece, or maybe seeing it in life, like on the wall in a cafe or in someone's home. You don't spend as much time with the piece a lot of the time. But maybe I'm just observing that.
No, it's really important. I mean, the curatorial aspect is really important, what the curator does.
Yeah.
You know, what Martina do in putting it on a blue wall as opposed to a red wall is important. And you see differently. The artist is able to understand a lot of other issues that were coming through while doing the work. The artist is able, or the creator, the person who creates the work, is able to reflect, even in broader terms, you know, more expanded ways on the subject, and to connect and rediscover new stuff about what was considered something done years ago.
Yeah.
You realize that it exists in the present continuous tense. You know, the stuff that were there then is still there now, irrespective of what form they're taking. So yeah, you're right. I mean, I do think by putting it in that context, when things are taken out of the studio, or when things are taken and put in a certain context, it does inform and a kind of rediscovery. Yeah.
Something I'm curious too about your story is that it seems like travel and relocation and being exposed to new cultures seems to be really important to you. And I feel like that's a pretty rare and amazing experience to have. Do you feel like that's something that's just in your DNA, that you're just ready to, you know, jump into a completely new setting? Or is that something that you try to force yourself to do? Or like, why do you feel like it's important for you to be in such new places in terms of going to France or Brazil or to Beijing?
Because I largely, I think coming up, I've always felt as if, like, you know, you study the work of Paul Gauguin and Gauguin work and really loved it, and you related to the tropical environment, the romantic or kind of like aesthetic way in which he painted these people. Not that Gauguin was the nicest guy in terms of the 12-year-old girls he used to have sex with, you know. But the fact is that, you know, looking at the work, you know, is kind of, you know, you wanted to go to that place. You know, Gauguin was the artist I remember looking at a lot as a foreign artist, and I just only could look at books. We don't have an original Gauguin at our museum, and so his work kind of wanted to take me out of the space I existed. Even when I was in Jamaica, I wanted to go into these other spaces, other tropical islands, other kind of, I wanted to see the world. And after a while, when I read, I was critical many times of my textbook teacher who taught anthropology. The attitude of the native, or, you know, the savage, or the this or the that. I mean, in those days, those terms were used, those euphemistic terms were used, or euphemism, for people of color in universities and so on. I mean, people used to use the word as if it's just, or, you know, that these savages were, you know. So the fact is, universities, academia has come a long way. I mean, at least some of them. I wanted to go to the places and see the stuff and touch the things myself, and talk to the people myself, and dance and party with them myself, wherever. I mean, be it in a so-called modern or so-called primitive setting. I wanted to, I wanted to see where the Apostle Paul of this constant Christian religion being shoved down your throat. I needed to see where the Apostle Paul wrote some of his epistles and what exactly, and the kind of space architecturally and so on he existed. I wanted to, the kind of stories you were told and how you were told those stories meant something to me. I absorbed them, but then there was something always missing. I just needed to kind of like see, okay, there must be something left over that this guy left or such and such had talked about that I could go and touch and look at, close up. The Michelangelo, David,
Yeah.
to go and see this guy with a slingshot and so on who killed David and Goliath or whatever, or Goliath, a lot of other things sprung up in your mind visually as an artist, a young artist, when you were told all these stories and so on. So you wanted to go and see the stuff and to touch it, and so I wasn't surprised when I became passionate about just using every cent I have when I sold work to travel. That's what I did. I wanted to see, to touch, to hear. I wanted to use my senses as opposed to someone intellectually preaching to you from a TV or from a... And TV, of course, is very important. And once it was on TV or in the Boston Globe or the New York Times, you're supposed to believe it, You're not supposed to see the stuff for yourself. Well, the fact is that all my experience traveling has proven a lot of the stuff I've seen on TV and just conversation I've had. I had to take a new look when I lived in these societies. For 10 years, 8 years, the 2 was my own time. I taught during the summers in France. And I learned a lot about the French people, a tiny bit of the language. I interacted with other students, Americans and Japanese, Indians, and so on there. And you learned a lot, and your idea changed totally of the French people or of, the way you relate, be it intimately or otherwise. When I went to Africa, the same thing. You are supposed to see people only in straw houses and all this kind of stuff. Senegal, largely, a large part of it feels like Paris. I mean, it was the French who colonized it, so it tend to... Ghana, more English. It was the English, the Queen, as well as Queen Victoria and all these people who were there. Mm-hmm. Queen Margaret, Queen whatever, long before her. And you saw Ghana, it's more English, unkept architecture, the way the people were, the languages they speak, how much English they speak versus Twi or Kumante, which is another language. And you really see that how journalists also in the West are uninformed. There's like totally, and they have Harvard degrees, which is kind of like shocking sometimes. So, I mean, you learn to look more critical on the world. And you learn also to hopefully empathize and be more humble about what you know and what you've seen and heard. And not to open your mouth unless it's, maybe a sensible situation. Because most of the stuff you're going to say, you're going to look like an idiot because people are not going to believe you.
I do it all the time.
So, well, there you are. So it's actually the travel. I've spent thousands upon thousands of dollars traveling.
Yeah.
I didn't hold back at all. I would sell a painting, I remember, for $5,000-$6,000, and I would go off right away. And the money was done, and I would come back home. So I broke. So it was constantly like that for many years. And at times when I started teaching, the school would pay your fare, I guess, depending on what, and give you a little salary. That was different when you start teaching in France. But all the other places, I paid my way. I took my knapsack and whatever, some art material, watercolor, whatever, and I would set up shop wherever I go. set up a studio and work.
Yeah.
You know, so it's and those images photographs I've taken of those, I think in themselves are a work of art. At some point I think I should show those, not only my paintings, because I think some of those images are more novel than my paintings. You know, photography is a wonderful medium.
Yeah.
What medium you work in?
I do kind of arrange mostly painting and some ink drawing.
Ink drawing,
but
okay.
Collage a little bit.
What about you?
I mostly oil and acrylic, but I also do a lot of mixed media stuff with like inks and graphite and things like that.
Okay, great.
And some sculpture, mixed media sculpture.
Nice. Well, at some point I hope I'll see you guys work, which or if I get your website or something.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I'll take a look. Yeah.
Something that I really...
Did I answer your question?
Oh yeah, absolutely,
Okay,
and more,
okay,
and
yeah,
more.
Yeah, okay.
Something that I really, that really resonated with me that you said was the idea of looking at the world, critically. But it seems like there's also so much love coming through for you, where it seems like you love these places and the art and to learn while also looking at it critically. I feel like a lot of people might struggle with that, with being able to do that, because they might want to look at things critically because they feel like they know that they've been lied to, or that things are been misrepresented, and it might fill them with hate or anger. I guess how do you find that love even while you're looking at it critically?
I think after a while of when you look critically at certain stuff, and then you actually learn to be patient. You actually learn to kind of to the anxiety that you might have to express feeling deceived for years and just being told certain type of thing. You kind of you learn to be cool and to the knowledge and depend on how, because a lot of the spaces, the geographical, it's people whom you're relating to, or nature, or historic kind of archaeological sites, and so it's one of those three things, like people, spaces, modern architecture, old architecture, as in old spaces, ancient spaces, or and then mysterious type objects, otherwise are rituals. So if you categorize all of those things, the people whom the people are able to kind of heal me. They are able to, when you're among them, if you're positive and you're not condescending and depend on where you are and so on, just really be open, they will come towards you and they will talk to you even if they can't speak your language. I mean, when I was in Turkey, the south of Turkey, going towards, I remember Cappadocia. Yeah, it would have been Cappadocia. A Kurdish woman come over to me and she said, she thought I was Italian. I said, "You're Italian?" Italian, because one of the darkest skinned person probably see from that section of Turkey and the way I look or so. So I said, "No, I'm Chinese, but Chinois." But it was just a kind of way of joking, and because I don't know if I look Italian in any way. I know I don't, but I think she was just associating my dark skin with Italians, who are that section of Italy, and Greece, and then you have Turkey going over to the West Asia. But the fact is that during that time, I remember, because I was very young, very young, there weren't a lot of. I was probably the only black person you'll find walking anywhere around this vast desert and kind of, it was impossible unless you went further south, maybe say 500 miles further south, or so. And so I was constantly going through spaces that were like. I could have been, if they knew an American passport, I could have been kidnapped too. Anything could happen. Another place I thought about being kidnapped was when I was in Colombia, like places in the Terra Dentra, the mountains of Terra Dentra in South America. I mean, if you're kidnapped by these guerrillas, you'll never be seen again, unless there's some money or something, you know.
Right.
But I mean, but then you met people, and you also had a degree of youthful naivete, where you are not afraid of a lot of stuff. That's why young soldiers usually go to war, 19, 20, 21, with their gun, macho stuff, to shoot somebody or whatever, to shoot the enemy. Like, you know, different countries use young men to go as army to go and fight their wars, and because they're young and naive. And I had a lot of that naivety in my travel too. When I was traveling, I was fairly open. I was like totally open just to find out stuff and to learn and to whatever. And that wasn't always cool, because I could have easily been you know, violated or killed, or some sort of thing could have happened in part, especially when I was on West Asia or the East. But if so far I met some really beautiful people in both Western Europe, West Asia, East Asia, South America, and these people would invite me to their home, and half of the time, you know, they would give me a place to stay, or they'll cook for me, or you have to be wondering, you know, why are these people so kind? And I'm talking about different level people, up to even middle class, or not just middle class, but upper class, you know, and you'd like, and the kind of reception, that alone, throughout your experience, will kind of allow you to have enough optimism and for you to carry that optimism to America, to other places in the world, to not ever abuse the kind of kindness and love people have shown you, and to somehow understand that that is the only thing that seems to exist that is of any meaning in life, and maybe the art you make, you know, that this kind of human connection. So there was a lot of that, you know, there's a lot of, you know, I mean, I remember, you know, I had an Algerian girlfriend who was we had a real beautiful romantic, you know, and I mean, I shouldn't be saying this because I don't want anyone else to kind of, you know, who is in my life right now to see that I actually and get jealous. But I mean, but that is part of, you know, your life. I mean, those are not things that you will easily forget. It's why you are a human being. About the kind of love that people gave you and what you give back. And my mother, my own mother, my parents, I mean, my grandmother, these people, I don't even know where they come from, because the kind of love that they had was unbounded. It was like totally. So they show as part of your survival, and for you not to be ungrateful, if I might use that word, about a lot of stuff. Those things are instilled in me from them, you know, and then how you know, that helped me to travel. That helped me to also have the kind of naivety I needed, because I think you have to also be naive. You can't be, because you know something, you know. You just didn't know shit, and you just go along and you learn. And I don't know if that answers you.
Oh, it does. I think especially leaning into spaces that you haven't been in before, meeting people who, like we talk about the way that you see the world is informed by what you grew up around and the things that you know and the nature and the area that you're from. If you're going to a completely different part of the world, like, you don't know anything about the way that they see things. So that humility, I feel like, serves a lot. Yes,
you're right. You have to feel vulnerable. And vulnerability is actually a very good thing. You know, and it's also a source of enormous strength, because it allows you to learn certain things that you wouldn't see possibly if you didn't make yourself vulnerable. And so, you know, I know it's different if, say, a woman was traveling alone as opposed to a man. And so the world is still evolving when it comes to the idea of a vulnerable woman or passing through and not messing, because women feel more vulnerable in different ways than men. And that I acknowledge, the fact that I was a guy, a boy, passing through, because I was a boy, I was a little boy, I remember the earliest points. It's the boys. I remember in Turkey in Tunisia, in Turkey. I remember when I just landed there, and all the guys were without their shirts, sitting on one side, and all the women were like way down, with some of them covered. It's a secular society, but it still, in a pointed way, shows something because of the religion. The division between women and men, the power structure. And, the guys are able to go wherever and do whatever and touch whatever. And, you have to be really careful as in terms of the female. I did receive the shock of my life in one of my experiences, and that is when a fairly secular family, but they wear the burqa, and not burqa, the hijab and everything, and came out. This guy, their father came out and said, "Who are you?" And then introduced myself. Said, "This is my daughters." And these tall. I remember how tall they were, and I do have some pictures of them. And he said, "Let me take pictures with you and my daughter." And I'm like, "What?" And I was like, So that was kind of like, again, breaking down a certain stereotype.
Yeah.
I'm here hugging to a woman in a hijab, and them taken in a country like that and far south, and it kind of broke down again the barrier. And I begin to say, well, how is it like this everywhere? I don't know. I mean, and you begin to learn. Other than what the textbook tells you or what the embassy tells you in terms of information, you just realize that there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of bullshit going back and forth, and you just have to go and find out stuff yourself. And so that was one of the experiences I thought I would just mention to you. I mean, it has changed. I haven't been to Turkey in a few years now. I think a lot of things have changed in West Asia and is an Islamic country. Morocco, I've been to I know things have become geographically more intense now between China and I still have my student in China. I can't go there because of the geopolitics, all of America and Xi Jinping quarreling with each other. I mean, I was there for cultural and artistic and trying to learn and do my stuff. Now, you can't go. You're not allowed to go. I don't know when this is going to be over. Yeah. My studio is locked up with most of my paintings there. I mean, this is nothing in comparison.
Unbelievable.
So
like a whole portfolio over there.
That too, yeah. It's much. It's about 5-6 times the size of this.
Oh wow.
And a lot of work I've done over the years and so on and so.
And you said it's been 2 years since you've been able to go there?
Yeah. Going to 3 years now because of the pandemic.
Oh yeah.
The policy was that foreigners can't go into China right now. You can't unless you're a diplomat. I could have probably go through some sort of diplomatic strain, but it would be too much hassle.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do. And sorry, Chinese nationals can't come out neither unless. Excuse me, I'm burping at this one. Unless there is some sort of special. I don't know, but I don't think they can come out. So it's very stringent. Very the rules are extremely draconian right now, and just like stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, don't let Xi Jinping come and get me for. But it's unfortunate because a lot of the many Europeans are in China, and maybe 70% of them have left right now. And you're talking about hundreds of thousands. But China is huge, and China has 1.5 billion people. So in Beijing alone, the main capital, and Shanghai, those main capital, there are a lot of Europeans, a lot of people from the East, lots of, it's very international culture. And, like myself, I'm there too, and I'm doing my work, but I've always taken seriously other cultures and tried to pull from them for creative ideas.
Yeah.
And China is the longest in setting up a studio. Jamaica is longer than China, of course. I've had my studio there a little studio since I was a baby, you know, and I work here too. So there are 3 basic places I work.
I wonder too, with the perspective that you have of having worked in so many places, how do you see the arts community in Boston comparative to the places you've been?
Boston is very conservative in terms of ideas and how they see a great artist doing great work. I mean, I think I was lucky on that just because I'm a good artist. A few times I got in a few of these shows. But there are a lot of real fabulous artists in Boston, and they've never had the opportunity to show their work in a significant institution. And I've seen them. I've been to some of their studios. It's just, and some of them are in little towns like New Bedford, out there, Amherst, and they're just great artists. The curators and the institutions in Boston, I don't think I've ever really reached out. It has been more like private clubs for many years in Boston. And it's okay because people are entitled to their private clubs. I mean, and I don't say it cynically. I say it because it's a democracy, and I don't think the Museum of Fine Arts has ever defined itself as being a kind of a place that show contemporary art. It has begun doing that now for the last maybe 10 years, 15 years. But New York is very different. With the museum, you'll find, a lot of contemporary, a lot of stuff. The Guggenheim, you'll find, but Boston tend to say, other than the ICA, which I think is picking up. I like the ICA and the direction. I love the direction of the Museum of Fine Arts. In fact, I prefer the Museum of Fine Arts as an art institution than any of the institutions around. It does something when I go into it, and my appreciation of history and the stuff it has, the precious stuff. I love that museum. But in terms of function for a 21st century society and the way society has moved on. A lot of young people have moved and left the museum a long time ago with their concept of art and ideas. And the museum needs to catch up with those people, with the young people. So, and I'm not being critical. I'm just stating a fact. So, I mean, I'm a passionate, serious artist, and I know and I watch society not only in terms of making art, but sociologically. I look at the composition, I look at the place, I travel, I look at the comparisons, and it's such a wonderful museum, and it just could be more open, and it will be, because I think the guy who's there now as director is making a lot of effort to make sure it happens. Matthew. I think he's a great guy.
Have you got to meet him?
Matthew curated my work at ICA years ago.
Really?
Yeah. And then I've met him again. I saw him. He came to my show at the NAGA Gallery. The NAGA represents me for the last 20 years.
They're in Boston?
Yeah, the NAGA Gallery.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar.
Yeah, you should go by there. It's,
I'd love to.
Yeah, you can ask them to pull out any work. Tell them I sent you.
Yeah.
The NAGA is one of the top 2 galleries in Boston. You have the NAGA, and then you have another gallery further down. It has been around. It's very important. It's on Newbury Street, 67 Newbury Street.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
you've had like a bit of a friendship with them.
The NAGA.
Oh, with Matthew.
Matthew, yeah, to some extent. I mean, he seemed like the same person, the humble guy I met years ago. I was very impressed by that, and he seemed like he came to my show and spent an hour, maybe over an hour, talking to me about my work and so on and so forth. And luckily, I had met him when he curated my work at ICA many years ago, before he came back to New England as a curator, as the director of this museum. So, this is a kind of luck, because not every artist had that opportunity. So I don't take for granted. So he came to my show, gave me the personal visit, and spent a lot of time. We talked and so on and so forth. And hopefully that relationship can continue in the future. if he sees it, as I can talk with him more and so on. Because I think I can tell him a few things about my life story that he hasn't heard yet. So, yeah.
Do you think that museum officials and executives and stuff should be communicating more with artists or with like different people like in their communities?
Yeah, I think they should be talking like twice more, a lot more with I think they do make an effort, and I think they're extremely busy people, and the resource in museums usually are understaffed in terms of curators and people who do administrative stuff. And I'm sure they have a lot of paperwork and they have to spend a lot of time fundraising, because the museum business is like selling Tiffany jewelry. Sometimes it's like ostentatious goods.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's very important that they're able to keep the museum a certain standard. So money is important, and millions of dollars. So that's what the objects are for.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they do it, but I think if a museum in the 21st century is to be very successful and not to die, I think the important thing that they should be doing is talking with artists, talking to the sources of art making, and it doesn't mean that it has the conversation has to be about contemporary art. It can just be about life, because art is life, and it's all connected. And the ordinary man too. But you say the artist, yes. I think I think historically the directors and curators who have spoken and who are in touch a lot with artists on the ground, that those museums have been able to acquire some of the best work, like the Metropolitan, like the Guggenheim, like, they were in touch with, Edward Hopper, Andy Warhol a lot, Barbara Gladstone, and those people in New York City, the women who were primarily the pioneers for many of the art galleries. They were very much in touch with the artists and the curators. So they were the bridge in a way. A lot of the earlier galleries were women who directed them, and then a lot of them were people like, then you had people like Ivan Karp and so on, who came on later. And, but this kind of mediatorship between the galleries, the museum curators, and the artists, it was more, I think, a lot more normal than now. I think nowadays there tend to be too much elitism, like you have to have a certain connection to meet this director or that curator. Many of the curators are not like that. Yeah. They are very enlightened. They know that connection with the ordinary persons is important. But the institution needs to really, really make a special effort to talk with artists, and then take the knowledge and do something with it. They're curators, they are directors, so they're the one, they know what to do with the knowledge. The artists, I'm sure, would tell them to the wrong thing, because artists always want certain things for their ego or whatever, But I trust the curators. When they hear the story, they will kind of, they're more objective. They'll know what to do.
Yeah. As long as they remember to listen.
Yeah, as long as they listen and so on. I think
and remain open.
It will be fine.
Yeah.
I feel positive about the institution now. Some changes with the new curators.
Yeah.
Some changes will happen. Amy Lighthill was a curator in 1985, 86, 87. I met when I just left school, and I was just kind of like, she left Boston. She was very progressive, and she was into contemporary art, but she didn't last very long. And I'm sure you can go and research her and read up articles on her. she was extremely dynamic and very interesting person. And I never forget her. And just recently again, I see some staff like Martina and some other young staff that I think is going to turn the museum around in a positive place. Yeah. And I feel very good about it. What's your capacity there?
I actually work in ticketing. I'm just in tickets. I'm in the front lines. Yeah.
Oh, great! That's a great job.
Yeah.
Ticket, why not? Yeah.
It was sort of a coincidence. I didn't even realize that Martina didn't know that I even worked there when I connected with her on this.
Don't worry about it. Ticket is not unimportant.
Yeah.
You know what you do and how you work. You know, it's really important part of. You know, trust me.
Yeah. Something I enjoy about it is that I can see people's responses to the art every day. Like I'm one of the people that is there. So it's nice to have that face-to-face interaction and hearing people's perspectives on what's showing. It's interesting.
Yeah. All right. So, are you done?
Sure. Yeah, we can wrap it up here. I mean, this has been a really wonderful interview. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time and for letting us in here.
Yeah, my pleasure. And,
thank you.
And if you have any questions, feel free to check me on the song.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got it. Wow.
Yeah, you caught me at a time when I guess I'm talking a lot, so I don't know.
We really appreciate it. Like,
we appreciate it.
It's funny too because we never really prepare questions. We never know what to expect. We just go in and like honestly hope for the best.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like
that's okay. I think it's fine. That's real research actually.
Yeah.
Research. The definition of research is simply to find out.
Yeah.
You're not going to impose anything. You just want to. You know,
to see
and
whatever is there.
That's it.
We don't know what we don't know.
And I think you guys are doing a great job. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you've made our show even better by coming on it. So
that's great. Nice.
Thank you.
Do you ever have images in your show?
We will usually select an image for the cover, but we also have a written blog on our website
I'm just curious.
where
I don't
we
want
include
to
some.
Use mine. I'm curious.
Yeah.
Don't think I'm trying to say.
No, we do have we have a blog where we include some stuff, and we use Instagram as well. But it's pretty much just audio.
Okay.
Just like just like public radio.
Yeah.
But that's the aspiration. Maybe one day we will be in public radio. Who knows? But right now it's just internet.
I hope they have some kind of projects for young people.
Really?
For NPR. You guys should check it out. I mean, I don't know how you can apply, but I'm sure.
Who knows?
I'm sure there are ways once you start to check their website and phone, you probably will see some where you can apply, young people.
Yeah.
That's the dream.
Blogs or podcasts, whatever, can be used because I think NPR is supposed to be like that or like what you are trying to do. It just seemed to me like that's what NPR is trying to.
Yeah.
That's high praise for us.
It is. I mean, it's supposed to be. I mean, I don't know where else they can go.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's just the people who are younger than them and who are. That's it. That's where the story is. The story is right there. They can go with the professional people and get stories from all kind of professional. But the idea of just on the earth is a whole different kind of set of stories. So you know that.
But yeah, I guess we can wrap up here. So once again, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. I'll shut this off now.
My pleasure, Theo. Theo.
That was Bryan Mcfarlane, artist and professor. Read more about his work at his website listed below, and look at all of his beautiful artwork listed on his gallery's website. Links in the description. Thank you.
Boston Art Podcast is an independent DIY production by Brian Huntress and Theodora Earthworms. The information contained in this episode represents the views and opinions of the original creators or our guests, and does not represent any institution, organization, or business. Find us on Instagram at Boston Art Podcast, and tune in for a new episode every Friday. Thank you for listening.